At this point, I have about 7 years of riding this exact motorcycle. It is a 2013 Yamaha FJR1300. It's time to review it. This will be my MRV, motorcycle review video, Nutnfancy project. I mostly review knives, guns, multi-tools, tactical systems, do adventures. Make sure you subscribe, check out the flow of content. At this point, I have produced about 2,500 videos. It's a lot. Join my donation service, link below. Thanks for the support. They bought the gas and food to come out here from Utah for this review. On the Pacific Ocean, by the way, that's no green screen. We are north of Bodega Bay. Super cool arch right there. Very scenic, very photogenic. You'll see a lot of people coming and going while we review the motorcycle because it's really cool. It's a cool location. Got a nice beach over here, lots of people. It is a Saturday. Stupidly, I chose a Saturday to come out here. That's not good. Lots of people. It's during COVID-19 also, and lots of people are getting out. Roads are packed. Beaches are packed. Still beautiful, still worth coming out here. And I always try to choose a really scenic roadside location to review my motorcycles. The Kawasaki ZX14R was reviewed in the mountains of Utah. Go check out that video, that MRV. And let's start it off because I got a lot to cover in a feature-length motorcycle review. Not 10 minutes, not 20, not 30, probably over 40 minutes is my guess because I just have a lot to say about this. Again, a lot of experience trying to help you guys out that are shopping for a motorcycle. I can tell you the ups and downs of the Yamaha FJR1300. I do have a lot of riding experience at this point. I've ridden a K1200, lots of time on a K1600 BMW, lots of time on dirt bikes, KTMs, 350s, 500s, 690s. I've got a KTM 1190, which I love. Super sport riding, Suzuki Hayabusa ZX14R, BMW 1000RR, I think it was, BMW 1200 GS, and a whole bunch of other motorcycles. Now, I'm not saying this to show that I'm special or cool. I'm just trying to establish a foundation of where I come from when I say the things I say about the Yamaha. I find it's helpful to know what the background is of a reviewer and their perspective. Now, you might find some 5, 10, 15-minute reviews on this motorcycle, but most are from Motorcycle Press, and so they were on a test drive. I'm not sure how helpful they would be. I just make the type of video, the type of review, no matter what it is, that I myself would want to watch, entertaining and informative. Now, I have a ton of first-person riding video that I will insert into this video from GoPro, of course, as we have taken it across the western states. Arizona, Utah, Wyoming, Nevada, lots in California. So that will overlay this video while I'm talking, maybe some exterior footage as well, we'll see. What would you use a Yamaha FJR1300 for? Why would you buy this over the also excellent competition, of which I may mention before the video ends? The bottom line to me, and this is just my opinion, is you want to go fast, you want to look cool while you're going fast, and you either want to take along gear or another person or both. That is the calling, in my opinion, the philosophy of use of a Yamaha FJR1300. Now, it's great to have a super sport, Hayabusa, ZX14R, maybe a Ninja 1000, something like that. I had a Yamaha FZ1. The problem is, I had a hard time taking my wife with it, gear with it. It was just too small, too cramped. You want something that has room and cargo capacity. Now, with your Yamaha FJR1300, whatever flavor you get, you will get side bags. You'll see some imagery of those side bags somewhere along the video. I have them removed for lane splitting in California. Usually I do what I'm doing now. Just run a backpack for now. That's a Camelback 2,000 cubic inch backpack or a duffel. And that's how I roll. I can lane split really easily, legal in California. I do it all the time. It can carry gear. It can carry my wife plus gear. We have done a 3-nighter on this, and we just filled up the side bags. I did put the side bags on that expedition. Carries her comfortably. We'll talk more about the rider amenities, but let's focus again on philosophy of use so you can figure out what you would use a Yamaha FJR1300 for. Now, of course, there are cool motorcycles from every manufacturer. I'm not going to sit here and just say Yamaha is all that. Kawasaki makes great bikes, Ducati, Honda makes great bikes, KTM. Every manufacturer does such a great job. But there aren't that many super sport tourers that I see. And that's what we're looking at. It's something that is kind of a sport bike really at its heart, but it can also do what I'm doing here, a long distance ride out to the coast of California from Utah and touring along the way, again, bringing people or gear. There's a couple, again, I'll mention them and you can figure out if they would work for you. I chose a Yamaha with my own money. It is completely paid off now, thank you. And there have been some advancements in the bike. This is a Gen 3 Yamaha FJR1300. I'll mention some of those advancements in other generations as they have progressed. It's 2020 when I'm reviewing this. I would not choose this as a first motorcycle. You need some experience probably before you tap into a Yamaha FJR1300. Mainly because it's kind of heavy. It is fast, yes, but it's heavy and you need to be comfortable with maneuvering a big bike, especially if you're 2-up or loaded up. I think the latest generations dry are weighing about 642 pounds, which may sound like a lot, but usually the competition is going to be even heavier. Don't use this as a first motorcycle. You need to run something like a 400cc, maybe a 250cc, get comfortable with that. Maybe run around on a little Ninja or something, get used to that, and just slowly work your way up to a Yamaha FJR1300. Now, when we talk about a sport tourer, that covers long distances, as I've mentioned. Came out here from Utah for this trip. You want a heavier bike, a more stable bike for that, because you're going to be buffeted by winds all the time. Pretty much 100% of the time you'll have winds fighting you. Let's go back to the smaller bikes. So let's say you say, well, I'm just going to tour around on a 400, 600, 650cc motorcycle. Well, I've also driven the V-Stroms, the 650 and the 1000. We had those. They're long gone. They're sold. So is that FZ1, by the way. They're gone. They're good motorcycles, don't get me wrong, but they don't have the amenities and the stability of a Yamaha FJR1300. If you're going to be going long distances, you want something stable, comfortable, fast, and fuel efficient. Oh yeah, and reliable. And most of those other motorcycles are reliable as well. But they're just too lightweight and they're too cramped. So work your way up if you say, hey, I want to go touring. Also, you need to decide this, and I've talked to a lot of my viewers, they're called TMPers, both in the Patreon environment and the A-channel environment. And they asked me, hey, should I go with an FJR1300 or something like a BMW R1250 GS? And my answer is, you need to decide if you're ever going to take it off-road. Generally, most guys don't, if they're honest. You need to decide if you're going to go 2-up, and you need to decide if wind protection is important to you. It is to me. Let's go back to that long distance riding. Winds. Remember, I say it's always windy? It is. You're just going to get rocked by the winds. With that in mind, I like a fully fared motorcycle with a very tall windscreen. I'm 6'3", and that's what you're seeing. That's not the stock windscreen on there. I'll talk about that as we progress. But I want wind protection. If you go with kind of an off-roady motorcycle, to include my beloved KTM 1190 or the Ducati Multistrada, or the R1200, 1250 by BMW, those aren't really designed the way I look at it, and that's all I'm talking about, as full wind protection machines. You're kind of exposed on your legs. They don't give you full upper body wind protection unless you go to some extra lengths to put on an aftermarket windscreen protection system. An exception might be the BMWs because they seem to offer pretty decent wind protection. So that's another reason I like the FJR1300, and I did research all, at least in 2013, all the competition, all the alternatives at the time. Long distance tour, not your first motorcycle. It's one you want to cover ground, and let's go to that sport word. You want to sport ride maybe along the way. Maybe when you get there, you know, you lose your additional passenger, less weight. You drop your gear off at the tent or the hotel. You're lighter weight, and now you can go sport drive. This is a sport motorcycle. That means it's fast. It's capable in the twisties. I have a lot of video over the years posted on my project showing this. It can compete with what should be faster motorcycles and sometimes even take them. I'm not going to say which ones on camera because it creates a lot of drama when I do, because someone who owns that motorcycle will show up and go, oh man, there's no way. Well, it really depends on the rider. I've been in the mountains, technical riding in the mountains, high Sierras in Utah, on the coastal mountains here in California, and this thing has stomped some sport bikes, sports and super sports. Okay, I drive medium aggressive, okay? Not totally aggressive, I'm not full out, but there's times when I will sport ride. I think most experienced riders are that way. I've been driving motorcycles off and on since the 1980s. This is a motorcycle that can kick some ass when you're ready to drive it with some expertise. Let's talk about that for a second. This is not a lightweight track motorcycle, okay? It's not like an R6, an R1. It's heavy, okay? It's a touring motorcycle, but it does have in its DNA a fast sport motorcycle personality. You just got to know how to drive it and how to handle it. If you can do that, you'll be amazed at what you can keep up with and what you can stomp. A lot of cars. I mean, there are so many cars I've beaten on this thing. About the only thing that I can remember that ever gave me any run for my money on this FJR1300 was a brand new, this is like back in 2017, a brand new Porsche Carrera S. And I did beat it, but not by a lot. And I did have a full set of bags and some cargo on the back. There's cars that will beat it. I ain't saying there ain't. But it's pretty dang quick, has plenty of power for most riders. It can get the job done, and it is ready to sport ride if you're ready and if you're up for it. Be trained, take your time, be patient, and work up to this motorcycle because it does take a certain finesse to wring that capability out of a very heavy, in my book, motorcycle. Tour up touring, we talked about that, long distance sport bike, and then a commuter bike. I know a lot of folks that have bought FJR1300s as a long distance commuter bike, something where they want cruise control, they want the wind protection, they like the seats. A benefit of this motorcycle versus the BMW competition is that it is narrower. Very important if you live in a place where you will either lane filter or lane split. Do not discount this, coming from me, having done that for years and years. The BMWs are wide. They have wide mirrors. You got to fold the mirrors, or on the K1600, you fold them forward to squeeze by in tight traffic. I think with the bags off, the FJR1300 can squeeze pretty well. It's rare that I fold the mirrors on this motorcycle. And yet it's a full up, full wind protected, cruise control, powerful sport touring motorcycle. I did look at some others before I bought this one, and that was a big consideration, and a lot of them are too freaking wide for me to be a commuter bike. But I have friends that run an FJR1300. They're commuting long distances, they throw their work clothes on the back, and they absolutely love it. For a short distance commute, may not be your best choice because it's going to be more expensive, it's heavier, you don't probably need cruise control. I always love it, but you may not need it. And it really depends on your perspective, how long you're cruising for. But I'm a big fan of this motorcycle for most cruise situations, I should say commuting situations. And I think that would be a great place to leave philosophy of use, POU, just for a minute. We may come back to it. and dovetail this MRV into another acronym. My viewers know it well though, SAWC, size and weight constraints, or size and weight considerations. As I alluded to in the POU discussion, this is not a bike you want to tackle without a lot of experience, especially if you're going to be riding 2-up with cargo. It is a handful. You have to be used to riding that way. I suggest starting smaller, 400cc, 600cc. Get that experience. More importantly, get your confidence and techniques up, and then later on, when you get that experience, maybe you can dial into a Yamaha FJR1300. But that weight, again, in the wind, very useful. For stability overall on long distance touring, very useful to have. Maneuvering in heavy traffic, not that useful. Again, every bike can't be perfect at everything. You just have to figure out what you want to focus on. I think the FJR1300 in heavy traffic, steep maneuvering is doable. I have no problems with it. I'd much rather maneuver on this motorcycle than, say, a BMW K1600. That thing's a behemoth. It's like a freaking Goldwing. It's much heavier than this, and I'm glad I waited for this review because now I have a lot of riding experience on a friend's K1600. So this motorcycle lives in California, usually. It went back to Utah this month. Usually it's out here. His K1600 lives in Utah. So we swap out all the time riding each other's motorcycles. I feel like when I get on the K1600, in some ways I'm riding a bus. It's big and heavy, heavier than a FJR 1300 for sure. Again, as a touring motorcycle, those are great benefits to have. I don't mind the weight. But in slow speed maneuvering, especially if you're on gravel and tight confines of traffic in a parking lot, it's a disadvantage. I think in terms of SAWC for a touring motorcycle that can go 2-up with cargo, with additional weight, as you can see, a top box on it, I really think the FJR 1300 hits a sweet spot because it's not so heavy where you are lamenting the fact you have to maneuver this thing at low speed. So it's one of the lighter touring motorcycles, at least at the time, 2013, that I researched. Maybe that's changed, I don't know. I would not want something, I guess, like 450 pounds. To me, for touring, that's too light. My KTM 1190 tours well. It does not have the wind protection, as I noted. I think it's lighter than this, and it's pushed around by the wind a little bit more. Now that motorcycle, go watch my review, has a lot more capabilities than this does, of course, in the dirt, because it's really not a touring motorcycle. It's kind of a big dirt bike that can run on the road, the 1190. Completely different review, but it's interesting to note in terms of SAWC how it stacks up. So in your research, look at the weights of the motorcycle, throw a leg over them, maybe push them around a little bit. If you can get a test ride, that's really important. And you can tell if you're comfortable with that SAWC that you're looking at. I would steer you towards a Yamaha FJR 1300 if, again, you're looking for a touring motorcycle that's cool and fast and that can sport ride after you've unloaded it. Actually, even before you unload it. I've done that a lot too. Moving on, here we go. Engine, transmission. One thing I love about the Yamaha FJR 1300 is this. It doesn't have a freaking chain on it. So I don't have to worry about chain maintenance. This is super important for me because, again, oftentimes this motorcycle is stored at a friend's house and I'm not with it for a month, 2 months at a time, and he will ride it, but I don't have to worry about the chain being unlubed, it rusting, it getting loose. A shaft drive is so nice to have. The BMWs have it as well. I really love shaft drive. In fact, I wish I had it on a lot of other motorcycles. I know, it's not as efficient as a chain. It doesn't transmit power the way a chain does. But having raced this motorcycle a lot informally, I don't really notice it. Shaft drive, huge benefit of the Yamaha FJR 1300. Now the engine, last time I checked, don't quote me on this, was rated at about 146 horsepower I don't know if Yamaha really spits that number out very clearly. I had to dig for it. I have a Power Commander 5 on this one. I know. Power was adequate. I'm not going to say it wasn't, but I like to go fast and sometimes even faster. And so for the heck of it, I put a Power Commander 5 on this with a module. It's sitting under the seat, and I had it tuned by Rick. And we dynoed this in 2015 at 4,300 feet. This is to the wheel with this 1298cc inline 4, 127 horsepower to the wheel at high altitude in Utah once again. That's pretty good. I mean, I'm not going to say that's the fastest motorcycle out there, but considering everything with the loss of power through the shaft drive, that's pretty good. I didn't dyno it before the tune, so I can't give you a number on that. But I don't think I gained a ton of power with the Power Commander 5. Not that much. I did lose some MPG with it, but it's worth it. Usually, economy-wise, you can expect to get about 40 MPG out of a Yamaha FJR1300, even the current generation, if you drive it carefully. But if you get into it like I do, expect about 36 MPG, maybe 34 MPG. And that's about what I'm getting with the Power Commander, about 36, 34, depending on, again, how I'm hammering it. They have ride-by-wire controls. It's called YCCT. It's some acronym Yamaha has. You have two modes, sport and touring. It doesn't really make it faster going into one mode or another. It's just how the throttle responds. I pretty much keep mine in touring the whole time. So with a Power Commander 5 tuned the way I have it tuned, I am very happy with the power of my FJR 1300. Especially when I come down here to sea level, like here north of Bodega Bay. Air is denser, it performs better, I really like it. When I take it back to Utah, air is thinner, a little bit less power, and I can tell a difference. There's really no overcoming that unless I put FI on it, and I'm not going to do that. Not going to do it. Now, when you're talking about power of the FJR 1300, and again, this is just my experience, 7 years riding this machine, I don't really think of this as a real torquey motorcycle, even though Yamaha talks about it a lot. They brag about it. The torque of the Yamaha FJR 1300, it's in their literature. They even do literature anymore. It's definitely on their website. Real torquey, they'll say. So it accelerates easily, all that stuff. Some of that is true, some isn't. In normal day driving, normal acceleration, the torque of your FJR is going to be adequate. More than adequate. You'll like it. When you really want to get on it, when you really want to max perform your FJR 1300, you're going to have to rev it. You're going to have to get on it. You're going to have to stay in the gear longer. You can see where mine redlines. This Gen 3. So what is that, 9,000? Yeah, I'll get it up there. You know, when it's time to max perform, time to race, I rev this sucker. To me, that kind of says it's not that torquey when I want to max perform it. Again, that's just my feel. When I want to get on it, I'm going to rev it like a CBR 1000, like a BMW Super Sport, like my ZX14, like the Hayabusa. Just remember that. Again, you may have a completely different evaluation of torque because of what you've ridden and what you're used to. When I get on this bike, I've been riding Super Sport, Hayabusa, ZX14, KTM 1190, and so those are kind of my comparative motorcycles day by day. Now again, this is a 2013 Gen 3 5-speed transmission, shaft driven. Does that make me sad? The true answer is kind of. I do wish this generation had 6 speeds. I've always said that. I would prefer 6 speeds, totally. That being said, in day-to-day driving, in real-world conditions, I'm not out on the road going, man, I wish I had a 6-speed, because on this generation, the gears are spaced so intelligently, it's really not an issue. Now, I think they changed that on the 2016 and on model. So 2016, that generation of FJR added a 6-speed, a slipper clutch. They also added lean sensitive LED headlights and a rear LED taillight. things I don't have on this generation. Okay, so if you're going to go out and get a newer FJR 2016 or on, it will ride the same way this one does mostly. I've driven a 2020 actually, and it rode just about like this one. I really couldn't tell a difference, except my power commander tuning on this made mine a little bit faster. But other than that, 6-speed difference, some headlight differences, and also some suspension differences depending on which generation you get. On this one, all I have is this sliding switch. So it's right here. I go from hard to soft. And when I carry more gear, 2 up, I'll put it in the hard position. It stiffens the suspension up, and I'm totally happy with that. If you go with a 1300 ES, that stands for electronic suspension. You can change that in the menu. You can change your preloads for the weight on the front and rear of the motorcycle. I think it's both front and rear adjustments. My 1190 has that as well. I like electronic suspension adjustments. I wouldn't mind having that. But all those benefits, 6 gear, LED lights, electronic suspension, for me as a user, longtime user of an FJR product, they're not attractive enough where I would go out and sell this and get a newer generation. Dig? It's not worth it. So I love this bike. I love the color. The 2013 color is one of my all-time favorite colors that the FJR ever came out in. I'm not going to sell this one. Doesn't mean I don't like those other amenities, and I would say if you can score them, by all means go out there and score them. And also in the 2014 FJR 1300, they did raise the cruise control limitation from 83 miles an hour to 100 miles an hour. And I have that 83 mile an hour limitation still on this bike, and it is irritating. Of all the things I'm talking about, that irritates me most. Like when I'm going across the deserts of Nevada, California, Utah, I want to go like 90. I told you I like going fast. 90, maybe 85. Good MPG, speed balance there. Can't do it on mine because it's still limited. There are ways to remove that limitation from this generation of FJR, but it's a big deal to do it. It's a pain to do it. It's difficult. I think there are multiple speed sensors you have to deal with. I already have a power commander box in there. I've got a fuse distribution box. There's a lot already going on under my seat. I just haven't done it, and I probably never will. I'll just deal with it. But on the newer generations, 2014 and on, they removed that 83 mile an hour limitation. So good on them. Now, suspension. I'm not a real suspension freak, so I can't talk much about preload, what the back is doing, what the rear is doing. I've said this before. I will just say this. I ran this out of box with no changes, and I was completely happy for years. It's quite possible I'm a motorcycle doofus, and I should have changed it, but I didn't. Later, like years ago, I got into the manual, and I did fine-tune the front suspension for my likes, and now I can tell a little bit of difference, not that much. What I do notice on the FJR, if we're talking about suspension, how it handles, is this. It is a front-heavy motorcycle. That's another thing you need to know about the FJR series. The battery is held right here. So all that weight is up there. Now I've put a Shirai battery up front, so it's lighter weight. It's a pure lithium battery. It's awesome. I really love Shirai's, and even in cold weather, they've been really good for me. I don't anticipate changing it out at all. That did lighten my front end up a bit. But I find, especially at low speed, if we talk about the suspension of the FJR, it's front heavy. It wants to kind of dive into the corner. It's kind of a different feel you have to get used to. Once you're under speed, less noticeable, but it's still there. It's kind of like when you are sport riding it, like we talked about earlier in the video. You're going to have to kind of push the opposite way so it doesn't dive too deeply into the turns, the FJR 1300. It is front heavy, more so than any of my other motorcycles, to include the Hayabusa, ZX14. I'm trying to think on that Case 1600. Yeah, I think it's more front heavy than that motorcycle as well. Just be advised. Brakes are awesome in this motorcycle. Unified braking in the current generations, that's pretty excellent. ABS, of course, no big surprise there. My wheels did not come this way. They have been powder coated by a place called Full Blown Coatings in Utah, and I paid them for that. And that's some type of gold. I forget the exact type of gold that is, and they look fantastic with this graphite paint job. Oh my gosh, I do it all over, but man, was it a headache. I had to pull both rims off, both tires off, take it down to the powder coater, get it done. It is what it is. Now this duct tape right here, you may be looking at that, or actually it's electrical tape. You go, what the heck is that? I actually had a valve stem dry rot on me. Yeah, it dry rotted and it let all the air out of my tire on the interstate in California, and I was stranded. Yep, and so what I did after I got it repaired, that's a whole story in itself, I coated it in some type of glue there to prevent it from happening, and I didn't want it to get on the rim, and once the glue dried, it kind of locked it onto the rim, so I just left the tape there. Because to cut it off, I risk cutting that valve stem. I'm not going to do that. Yeah, that's another thing I recommend, is probably putting DuPont 303, not Armor All, but DuPont 303 on your valve stems. If you store it outside especially, so those valve stems don't rot. Voice of experience, just saying. Now let's step back here just for a second and enjoy the looks of the FJR1300 before we press on in this MRV. I get lots of comments about this. They go, dude, that is a great looking motorcycle. And I go, yep, I like it. It is cool, especially in this color. Now the 2019, I believe, was in matte Phantom Blue. The 2020 is in a really dark, almost black, metallic graphite. Those are great colors, both of them are. I don't really get into the greens, the bright blues. I don't do that. Again, it's all personal taste. And then if I ride a subdued color like this, I'm gonna ride lime green in my riding gear. And it kind of complements it. So I have a bright helmet, a bright safety vest. That's a hit air vest that I ride with on the FJR. So you might want to spend some time, if you're committing to buy an FJR 1300, even a used one, get the color you want, be patient, maybe go to Cycle Trader, get it shipped to your house, and you might even find a 2013 like this. I really love this color. It is fantastic. Pressing on. Told you, full length, detailed review of the Yamaha FJR 1300. Now let's talk about ergonomics of this bike. I'm 6'3"-ish, like I said. I do feel a little bit cramped on this generation of FJR 1300, even though the seat is adjustable by way of some stanchions inside there. So you can like adjust it up, I don't know, ½ an inch or something like that, maybe 3/4 of an inch, and that's where I have the seat right now. I'm slightly cramped as a tall guy on the FJR, and I've just dealt with it. I can't really put riding pegs on it either, because you're wind faired right here. Where are you going to put pegs at? The fairings come out as I want them to. There's really no way to do it. On that BMW K1600 GT, dude's got fairings on it, and he's also got some pegs that come out far, and I love those. They're very cool. I don't have them on the FJR. I do have some RG sliders on here. I highly recommend you run sliders if you're a sport tourer like I am, because it may save your plastics as you dump it. By the way, this is some reflective material that Tactical Doodle and I put on our motorcycles. See this? So that glows, not glows in the dark, but it's reflective of headlights. It's just a safety enhancement, and it blends with a paint job like perfectly. Yeah, so ergonomics, no rider pegs, a little bit cramped for me. The position of the pegs, both front and rear, are fine. I don't have a problem with that. The pull weight on the clutch is easy in this generation of FJR. The braking works great. Love that cruise control. Love it. Use it all the time. Again, in this third generation, limited to 83 mph, I deal with it. How about the back seat, the pillion? Is it comfortable for your wife, Nutnfancy? The answer is yes, and she has spent a lot of time on the back seat of the FJR 1300. She loves this bike. It's comfortable for her. The seat's comfortable. She has a place to grab right here. Great handles. Right now I'm using them to attach the bungees of my backpack. And sometimes we do run the side bags, which are included with your FJR1300 and work well. They carry a lot of stuff, they look good. Again, they do add some width for lane splitting, I have found. But the pillion seat is great. I have an Alaskan Leathers sheepskin on the top right here on the seat because it does help me. Raises me up just a little bit more, lets me have some more ventilation. I love this. And you don't have heated seats in this generation of FJR1300. Kind of a miss, really. But every touring motorcycle should have heated grips, heated seats, basically heated everything. Says me. It does have heated grips though, and I do use those all the time. As I do extended mirror covers. Now Yamaha, for the FJR, at least they did, they made a bigger mirror cover, and it's designed to block the wind from your hands. I have used that. What I really do when the weather gets cold is I put on those elephant hands covers for my handlebars. And I don't know if Elephant Hands, I think that was the name of the company, if they're back in business, I sure hope so. But dang, they're great products. So it just envelops your hand in a pocket of warmth, completely wind protects you. They're completely opened in the back. And I usually run Elephant Hands and just keep my standard mirrors good to go. And those Elephant Hands are really quick to put on and off. We're talking about creature comforts, amenities, ergos right now of the FJR1300. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on instrumentation here because it will eat up even more time on the camera. I'll inset some. There's all types of adjustments. I love the instrumentation of this generation of Yamaha FJR1300. Has 3 user-defined screens. You can display temp, MPG, you can have multiple timers, you can keep track of multiple trips, all the important stuff. Great menu system, easy to access on your controls. You'll get used to it readily. I find it's a lot better than the BMW, which I do find a bit confusing. Yeah, the BMW's is confusing. And the BMW does have some advantages over this one. It has more capabilities, but the FJR system is simple, easy to use, user-defined. Generally, to change something permanently in the menu, you have to be at a full stop before it'll allow you to do that, and you can designate what you want on those three screens, and you can see what I've put on mine. Glove box right here, key locked, so the key has to be in and turned on before you can open this glove box. And here I have my radar detector plugged in right here. It's just a Uniden X50. The other one died. It's a Cobra, it died. I don't really store anything in my glove box usually because I have a big old tank bag on here, as you can see. Oh my gosh, it looks huge, right? You're like, how in the heck do you get on that bike? Not a big deal. And I believe that's a Grand Tour or something tank bag, so it's a big one. But I use all the space, so I'll keep my wallet in there. In certain states, I'll keep a weapon in there. Just depends on where I'm riding. I think a tank bag is mandatory, but you don't have to run it, and in that case, you probably would be using that glove box. Now, these are aftermarket levers I put on right here on the FJR, and I guess I'll go over as quick as I can all my aftermarket mods that I did on this. I do it on every motorcycle. I think most riders do because there's just so many things that can be improved by adding them. Let's go quick. I got levers. I got some ram mounts on top of my reservoirs, 2 of them. One's for the cell phone, short ram mounts. One's for the radar detector. I've got a watch mount here. I just like having a second time readout where I don't have to go in the menus and correct it. I have small die mirrors to check for traffic. This is a great safety enhancement. I highly recommend it. These die mirrors, I bought these, I think, at Amazon. And then I have a Baja Designs light right here. This is a driving light. This is also a safety enhancement. I recommend you put that on as well, or something like it, if, like me, you're driving across dark spaces for a lot of miles, kind of like through Truckee, the mountains after Reno. Comes in handy. This bracket was made by a guy called Gary Crowley. Gary Crowley. He's an FJR enthusiast, and I just researched it and found him. He's out of Binghamton, New York. And these are Gen 3 light brackets. He might have Gen 4s out now. Go check it out. Worth it. I bought 2, but I don't need a light on this side, so I only mounted 1. Now this is a DVR camera with a dirty lens apparently, and this is a safety enhancement as well. So this is my always running front-facing safety camera recording what's going on. And then I run the wire back down here along with some other stuff. It runs back here, ties into the DVR under the seat. Here is the rear camera right there. So I like having a full-time DVR system. I only paid $50 for it, so it's really cost effective. I have this top case, and I don't think they make this one anymore. I've had it forever. And yeah, I do feel like that. Eat shit, commies. Trump 2020, go. Yeah, and then I had it sanded and painted. That's why it's so pretty. And then when I store it, I put a cover over the top case so it doesn't get all scratched up. And then I put double covers over it if it's going to be stored outside. That's another thing I did. I put helicopter tape on these grab handles. You may have seen it, so they don't scratch up. Have Yoshimura mufflers on it. It lightened it up. I got the CF. Tactical Doodle. My son has a 2008 automatic transmission Yamaha FJR, a great motorcycle. Automatic transmission though, and really fun. He loves it. He has stainless steel Yoshimiras on his, and he loves those. Those age a little bit better than the CF does. I don't know how many sets of tires I've gone through. Quite a few actually. I'm generally running the Road Pilots. I think these are Road Pilot 4s or 5s. I can't keep track of them. Don't know. I showed you the sliders that I put on. This is an RG engine cover, protective as well. It's another enhancement I put on. If we go under the seat, I have a fuse box that I use to distribute my power. Each one has its own fuse, and that is fuse relay to come on. So everything I'm talking about electrical will tie into that. So radar detector, the DVR ties into that, and anything else that I add on later, like boot heaters, leg heaters, stuff like that. That'll tie into the fuse box. For extra wind protection, I have a Bailey's extended windscreen, and it is absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately, Bailey's no longer makes motorcycle windshields, which sucks. Super sucks. I'm so sad about that. My buddy's K1600 also has a Bailey's on. It's a taller windscreen, and for taller riders like myself, it helps create that very preferred wind bubble that we talked about. Now, there might be some other options out there you can experiment with. I think the windscreen for me as it comes out of box, out of the crate, is way too short. I would hate to go back to that. I really would. So I'm trying to make this one last as long as possible. It does have a crack in it from the motorcycle being blown over in a 55-mile-an-hour windstorm in California. So it cracked here. I have it helicopter taped now. It busted that. It broke a mirror, and then my frame slider saved the side. That was the only damage I had. My friend called me and was like, "Hey man, your motorcycle dumped. It's jacked." I was like, "Oh crap." It was stored outside at the time. Double covers, but the wind caught it, even on the center stand. It was on the center stand. It dumped. Totally dumped. There's probably some other stuff I put on this bike that I forget. I left the motorcycle mounting plate on it. I'm sorry, the license plate mounting plate on it. I don't mind that. I like it coming down because it gives more mud protection, so I don't get stuff flipping up. Oh yeah, and I added this. This is a fender extender on the front. That does the same thing, so you don't thrash all this with rocks and debris right here. This is a fender extender, and you drill and put those little plastic keepers on it. Works great. There you go. And even though I don't have LED lighting in this generation of FJR1300, I've got this. So when I need to rock the night, I've got my Baja Designs. It's ready to go. It's ready to tear it up, and it does tear it up, and I can aim it wherever I want, you know, with a wrench set. I kind of have it aimed to the right to watch for deer. That's the main reason I put that on, by the way. Safety enhancement for deer. Here's my switch for the Baja Designs light, wired by myself. See it right there? Yep. Okay, and if I didn't mention, I probably didn't, The suspension is adjustable for preload and rebound. Enough said on that. Okay, we talked about cargo capacity during the philosophy of use discussion. We'll mention it again real quick. Again, I don't run the side bags unless I have to, because I'm lane splitting. In Utah, I'm lane filtering at a stoplight. I want the bike to have a narrow presentation for that. And so the bags just make it a little bit wide for me. So I'm running a duffel normally, and I've even camped off this motorcycle doing that. With Matt, my buddy, we went down the coast of California, camped off the FJRs. Fantastic. I just had a big duffel. But look at the room I still have. Speaking of sizing of your motorcycle, SAWC once again, POU. Dang, there's a lot of acronyms, nothing. I know. So even though I have a big duffel right here, I still have a good seating area. I'm not cramped. That is a huge plus, even with my humongous tank bag, right? I know, dude, that tank bag is huge. I love it. I might or might not have a taser in that side pocket right there, and other fun things in there. Yeah, so plenty of room for cargo. Yes, there are roomier bikes. I think the K1600 is better still. The side bags carry more. The top case on the BMW K1600 is amazing. It is big, but it's cavernous and can carry a lot more stuff. I'll say I put on a pretty big top case on this. As big as I could get away with without it looking alien, I guess. And moving on. Lighting we talked about. The lights that came with this generation, I forgot to mention this, they're okay. I swapped the bulbs out, as you can tell. It helped a little bit, not much. Yeah, not much. But now if you get a 2016 or beyond, you're going to get lean sensitive LED lighting. I haven't tested those at night. I can't really speak to their effectiveness, but it could be cool. It could be a big benefit. By the way, how does this thing sound with the Yosh cans on it, Nutnfancy? Well, let's crank it up and we'll see. I think it sounds great. It's throaty, non-obnoxious. I like that. I don't want something super loud and super obnoxious, you know, when I'm riding long distances. Even with the Yosh cans, you're not going to get that. It's just right. And this is just at idle, of course. But even when I rev it, it's not like obnoxious. See that? Just deep, kind of deep rumbly sound. So I love how it sounds. It's pretty good for me. I'm not going to change it, not going to make it more obnoxious. I usually change out my cans on motorcycles mainly to save weight. And by the way, those are CARB compliant, California compliant cans. So this thing can pass California emissions for TMPers and viewers who just show up and they live in California, they're wondering. All right, time to start wrapping it up. The Nutnfancy Yamaha FJR1300 review right next to the Pacific Ocean on this beautiful summer day. Lots of people enjoying the sights, having a great time. Again, no green screens here. This is really where I'm at, right on the coast of California. It is an epic place to do a motorcycle review. Lots of good people enjoying the sights and beauty of the California's Pacific Coast. I absolutely love it. Here we go with competitive options against the Yamaha FJR1300. We could be here another hour. I'll mention a few. Again, most of these I have ridden. I do have an opinion on them. Maybe I do a review on them later on, maybe I don't. The first one I would say is a previous Yamaha FJR1300. I know it's still a 1300, but it really is a different motorcycle, and that is Tactical Doodle's 2008 version. Again, with that, what I call an automatic transmission. It is a 2008 AEAS model with an electronic clutch, better said. And it has push buttons to switch gears, but if you don't do anything, it will do it for you. Kind of a weird transmission at first, but once you ride it, it is really, really fun. Sean the TMPer put some miles on that 2008 Yamaha FJR. Again, a different motorcycle really. He loves it and wants to buy it from Tactical Doodle. I'm not making that up. He fell in love with that bike. An advantage on the earlier generation, I believe that's second gen, not sure, second gen FJR1300, is they are lighter and more maneuverable and not as front heavy as this generation. When you drive my FJR and then when you drive my son's FJR, they're really two different motorcycles. The other FJR seems more sport bikey. Easier to throw in corners, it's lighter on its feet than mine is. Great motorcycle. As long as any of these bikes have been taken care of by a good owner, and most of them have been, oils changed, routine maintenance done, like changing out the transmission fluid, I think you're gonna really have a good motorcycle. Even if it has like, I'll say like 20, 30,000 highway miles on it, I still would get a used FJR, no problem, depending on the owner and how it's been taken care of. My buddy's BMW K1600 has something like 37,000 miles on it and you wouldn't know it. The bike is gorgeous. It's been well taken care of. He's like the second owner of it, and I might buy that bike from him for a really cheap price. And it looks great. So it really depends on who the owner was. Were they mature? Did they take care of the motorcycle? Do the programmed maintenance? If the answer is yes, buy with confidence. This bike, speaking of quality and reliability, will last your lifetime. I don't think you're gonna like run your FJR into the ground. Just ask those folks that do the iron butt rallies. This is a favorite motorcycle of theirs. They will lay down thousands and thousands and thousands of miles on their FJRs. There's guys that have like over 100,000 miles on an FJR, and it's running great. The engine, Japanese quality, reliability, the fit and finish, Japanese quality, reliability. I do think it's a little bit better than Kawasaki. And I have a Kawasaki. Little bit better. It's on par with Honda. Honda is fantastic. Just a really high quality motorcycle. My biggest issue I have with it is just keeping all the fasteners from rusting when I store it outside under double covers. So I'll apply oil to those, but there's a little oxidation going on here or there. But as far as the engine, I've had no problems. I did have, I guess we're getting into reliability here a little bit. I did have something weird on my front suspension. It was kind of a knock, and it was kind of weird. I go over a bump and I felt a knock, and I looked, I couldn't figure out what it was, so I took it to a Yamaha dealer, and they said it was just a bearing or something loose up here that they tightened and it went away. And that was cheap to fix. And literally that's the only problem I've had with this, even after tuning it with a Power Commander 5. So if you see like a 2008 FJR and it's taken care of and has, reasonable miles, I say get it. Even an automatic one. The automatic transmission is fantastic. You'll get used to that so quick. You'll love it. Talk to TD about it. You'll see him definitely in Patreon for this video. So join my Patreon feed, my donation service. $1 to $5 a month is all I really ask. And you'll see him there and you can ask your questions there. That's a much more manageable question platform than on the interwebs at YouTube, so we may miss it there. Other competitive options, and I mentioned this before, the BMWs are fantastic. They're more expensive to maintain. If you have service on a BMW motorcycle, get ready to get raped. Very expensive, at least if you take it to a dealer, and you just might have to because a lot of people don't want to work on BMW motorcycles. That being said, they're powerful, they're smooth, they're quiet, they're beautiful in most of their flavors. You have a BMW R1250 RT, R1250 GS at about 136 horsepower. If my numbers are correct, it's going to be less powerful than an FJR. I have ridden that, but it was briefly. I liked it. Great motorcycle. Kawasaki Concourse, or whatever the hell they're calling it now, Concourse 14. Great motorcycle, heavier than this, more sporty than this. One thing I failed to mention on the FJR1300 when we talk about the Concourse is that it has a more upright riding position. That is huge because you don't put a lot of weight on your wrists like I do on my Hayabusa or ZX14R. That gets old. So you want to sit more upright, and yet it's a sporty, beautiful motorcycle. The FJR1300 has that going for it. And I wrote this down. It has a 26-degree rake on it. There you go. I threw that technical detail in for y'all. The FJR. If you go with a concourse, it's more weight forward, it's more sport touring than it is, I should say more sport biking than it is touring in my opinion. It is a great bike. I've seen them outfitted with bags. I've passed a couple concourses on my rides over the years, and I've talked to their owners and they love it. So it is an option. You could ride one. I would much prefer an FJR for what I would do in philosophy of use. As we've discussed, Ducati Multistrada. I have a lot of miles on Multistradas. I think they're great motorcycles. We have a series of videos posted way back in 2013 in TMP. You can go watch that. I give all my opinions about it. I think Ducatis are great. I don't think they offer the reliability of a Japanese motorcycle, especially a Yamaha. I don't like their wind protection against the FJR1300. My legs are exposed, and they're more adventure motorcycle in appearance, and that's not what I wanted in this POU. Okay, for my 1190, that's what I want, but not for this. This is a road-going motorcycle putting down tens of thousands of miles potentially. I don't want to run a Ducati Multistrada. And by the way, their resale is in the tank. I mean, I've seen Ducati Multistradas don't sell. Like, they'll go up, they're lightly used, they're well taken care of, and it seems like nobody wants to buy the Ducati Multistrada product. I don't know what the hell's going on. KTM Super Duke, 1290 Adventure. Now you're talking, even though the 1290 Adventure, and that's where I'll focus on this, is more of, I guess it kind of has kind of an off-road flavor. It's really an on-road motorcycle. I think the 1290 Adventure with its cruise control, its power, is a fantastic motorcycle. It's going to be more expensive than this by a lot. I think the FJR, even if you buy it even if you buy it new, is reasonable. I don't think this is an expensive motorcycle for what you're getting, and if you're like me, you just keep it decade after decade. It's going to be cost effective. If you get it used, it's going to be like a steal. You go get a KTM, even 1190, 1290, you're going to be paying more. They're expensive. That being said, I love KTMs. Their motors are incredible. Their electronics are quirky. Sometimes they have reliability issues. We've had that with the 1190. Go watch our update videos. We'll give more in the future. We did have a Honda VFR. It wasn't an 800. I think it's like a 600 in the family. I've driven the 800. It's just not enough power for me, the VFR. Great looking motorcycle, kind of a touring bike. The engine's not big enough for me personally. It's not stable enough in the wind. It's too lightweight. It blew all over the place. It's just not fast enough. That being said, they're super reliable. They're gorgeous, especially that red with gold rimmed Honda VFR. I don't know if they're making anymore. I don't think they are, but it's a great motorcycle if you want something smaller. Triumph Sprint GT 1050. I have no experience with that, but you might check it out. It might be cool. Kawasaki ZX14R. I got a ton of experience on that. Got the bike. It is fantastic. However, it does not have the cargo capability of this motorcycle. It doesn't have the pillion comfort. It doesn't have the cruise control. It doesn't have the wind protection. It's more of a super sport motorcycle. Go figure. Great bike. I just don't want to throw down 1,000 miles on it unless I have to. Same can be said about the Suzuki Hayabusa. I got lots and lots of miles on a Hayabusa. I love it. Same thing can be said. ZX14R and the Hayabusa are basically the same bike in my opinion. How they ride, their looks are different, but their engines almost perform the same. They're fast, they're fun, but you need a taller windscreen. They just don't have the touring amenities and cargo capacity that you need if that's what you're looking for. Just a couple of competitive offerings. Once again, in 2013, 7 years ago, when I bought this motorcycle, I did look at all the competition, and this is where I ended up. And you might figure that I'm into research. That's what my whole project here is based upon. Research, logic, philosophy of use. I ended up with the Yamaha FJR1300. The question is, Nutnfancy, knowing what you know now, 7 years of riding experience, lots and lots of miles on all these bikes you mentioned, especially the FJR. Would you buy an FJR all over again? The answer, you may be surprised, is probably yes. Not a definite yes, and here's why. I think the BMW product, even though it's more expensive to repair, it has some quirks, really competes favorably against this bike. The only thing that I don't like, once again, is its wide profile. Whether you're talking a 1200, a 1600, they're just wide motorcycles, and they don't lane filter, they don't lane split very well. But their amenities, I think, are better than the FJR 1300. The BMW amenities are better. If I'm going to be honest, I have to say this. They have more cool things, more gadgets. They have like stereos and speakers that come with them. Like the K1600 I ride has freaking stereo in it. The pillion in the K1600 that Mrs. Nutnfancy rides on, she likes it better than the FJR. If I said anything else, I would be lying. She likes it. It's roomier. It's more comfortable for her. But when I weigh that against the sporty nature of the FJR, the lighter weight of the FJR, the higher maneuverability of the FJR, my answer is probably I would buy an FJR 1300 all over again. Especially with the current generation, 6 gears, lean sensitive LED lighting, rear LED tail light, electronic suspension, other improvements. I think you'll be super, super happy. So get to hunting, be patient on that FJR of whatever year you want to buy. Come back to the video, lay down a comment if you have one. Pedro, a TMP patron member that I have, he has an FJR. He and I discuss our bikes all the time. He puts down some miles on his. He loves his. Let me know about your experiences. If you agree with my takes and if yours are different, that's completely welcomed. In this MRV, we all learn from each other. I'm constantly learning, but that's where I stand right now with the Nutnfancy Yamaha FJR 1300. That review is done. And we'll take another look at the beautiful California coastline as I walk to yet another cliff. No green screen involved. And let's just look around, and I'm not going to say a word as we end here. Let you enjoy the sights.